Hi, everyone. Welcome to week 4. And I have some important announcements for this week. And also wanted to take a moment to go over a couple of concepts from the first few weeks, the first 3 weeks, that have given some of us a difficult time. And I think it's important to make some clarifications. Some observations that I have from your assignments, which I thought were very good and for the most part accurate, so good job on that, is that we sometimes might confuse a publicly provided good with a public good, right? And so the best way to not fall into that trap is to make sure that we understand the differentiating characteristic of a public good, and that has to do with exclusivity and rivalness. So if you see this chart here, you have private goods like a bathroom fixture or an automobile. It's a private good because you can exclude somebody from consuming it, and it is rival in consumption, meaning that if you lend your car to your father, then you can't use it, right? And so it is rival in consumption. A bathroom fixture is rival in consumption in the sense that if it's not installed in your bathroom, then it's installed in somebody else's bathroom, right? So excludable and rival. These are for private goods, the private goods are both. Then you have the non-excludable but rival in consumption. And these are common resources like clean water. So clean water is non-excludable, say a clean water lake, right? But it is rival in consumption, right? In the sense that if others use it, that's less clean water for you to use or enjoy. And if it's drinking water, even more so, right? Then you have the non-rival in consumption but excludable. So artificially scarce goods like a pay-per-view movie or pay-per-view fight, right? Like a boxing match, right? And so nobody can exclude you from enjoying the fight if you pay for the fight, but it is non-rival in consumption in the sense that you and your neighbor and another 50 million Americans can enjoy the fight, but it is excludable. And the way that it is excluded is through the price mechanism, right? You have to pay for the right to have that fight, to be able to enjoy the fight. Same thing with computer software, right? When we download something, usually it asks us to pay for something, right? And for example, Microsoft Office or some kind of software, it's non-rival. My use of Word and Windows and my use of Office doesn't reduce from somebody else's use of it, right? But it is excludable. And then you have the final and the most difficult one to understand, and that's public goods, right? These are non-excludable and non-rival. So national defense being the classic example. We cannot exclude somebody from enjoying it and from being protected. And that protection, my protection, doesn't rival your protection or vice versa. So the key point here is the differentiating characteristic, exclusivity and rivalness. This is what's going to determine what type of good you're dealing with. It's also important to note that the law of supply and demand are the same for private goods as they are for public goods. The difference is whether the market exists for us to be able to arrive at a price and therefore be able to allocate the supply and demand efficiently. Second point I wanted to comment on was the sources of market failure. And remember that market failure has many different sources. For example, asymmetric information, right? The market for lemons, right? The market for a used car. The owner of the car knows that car has been to the shop 50 times and has needed an overhaul, but maybe the buyer doesn't. And so the asymmetry of that information is a source of market failure. You also have market failure present when you have imperfect competition, usually monopolies. But it doesn't mean that the product itself is being produced inefficiently. You can have productive efficiency, right? Even monopolists want to maximize their profits, and so a monopolist will not want to produce inefficiently so that he or she keeps less profit. They're still going to want to use the most efficient cost allocation of possible. But the difference or the source of market failure comes from the price being charged to consumers, usually higher than the equilibrium price. Then you have the lack of well-defined or clearly established property rights. And this is a huge source of market failure, right? The tragedy of the commons, right? And this is where common goods, common public goods, right? The air, right? The clean air is a clear market failure, right? We don't have clearly established property rights. So who owns the atmosphere? Well, we all do, but nobody does at the same time. So the lack of those property rights makes it impossible to internalize those negative externalities that might arise from overconsumption, overuse of a resource. Then incomplete markets. Incomplete markets happen, for example, in health and education, right? For example, the market for student loans is an incomplete market because of the inability to assess risk efficiently and effectively. And then public goods, right? Public goods, remembering, right? Things like a public road, right? Which is a quasi-public good, by the way, because it is rival in consumption to some extent, right? Unless the public road is sufficient enough to not become rival in consumption, then it is a quasi-public good, right? So a highway, you can think about a highway where you don't have the issues of congestion. That seems to be fall under a category of a public good, but it is not really a public good because it is actually rival in consumption, right? The more traffic you have, the less efficiency of the road, the less utility you get, right? But it is non-excludable as far as the public good is concerned, the public road is concerned. And then, of course, externalities. And externalities are a source of market failure. But it's important to differentiate that externalities are one source and public goods and the inability to price is another. So thinking about the example of the highway, right? The externalities that arise from traffic, including the contamination, pollution from the automobiles, that's a separate market failure. That's a separate source of market failure, independent of the public road per se, because you can have your car parked in front of your house and it's still emitting the same contaminating chemical into the atmosphere, and it has nothing to do with the road that you're on, right? So the externality is produced by the automobile itself, not produced by the public road. So we have to be clear about the sources of market failure. And that's important because if we are not clear about them, it becomes very difficult or impossible to mitigate, to internalize those negative impacts, right? All right. So what's coming up next? For this week, we have for you to read chapters 10 to 13. Watch the videos on the key topics. Please remember to watch those videos. Of course, watch my lecture on week 4, for the week 4 lecture. And then last but not least, make sure that you remember to do your journal assignment, right? That journal entry that is required and due on day 7 at 11:59 p.m. Okay? All right. I hope you enjoy this week. I hope you enjoy the topics and the lecture. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me, write me an email, and I'd be more than happy to provide answers or address any concern that you might have. God bless. Thank you.